Vacuum fillers are unique and pretty fascinating in the world of fountain pens, but they can be a little bit confusing if you aren't familiar with how to fill them. In this video, I'm gonna explain the principles of how vacuum fillers work, and then take a step-by-step demonstration and show you how to fill a TWSBI Vac700R. But the principles of how to do this is gonna be the same for any vac filling pen like the Pilot Custom 823 as well. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Brian Goulet of gouletpens.com. I've been selling fountain pens and making YouTube videos for the better part of 15 years, and I've seen a lot of fountain pens, and vacuum filling ones are honestly some of the coolest ones to me because of the tech and the way they work. But there's not that many of them out there, so it's something that, a lot of people have questions about. They find it intriguing. So I wanted to make this video just to really show you what's going on and, get rid of some of the mystique about how these things work. So let's start with the absolute basics. How does this pen even work? Well, it's like any other fountain pen. It has a nib, it has a feed system that draws ink up from the ink chamber. And it's water-based ink, it just kind of flows down naturally through capillary action. Well, what's different about a vacuum filling pen is the entire chamber up here fills with ink. And rather than having a kind of a twist piston or like a cartridge you push on there, it uses vacuum pressure to draw ink up into the pen. Now, the way that you can tell that a pen is a vacuum filling pen is it's gonna have this long rod that just kind of pulls right out. And you press that down and that's gonna give you your filling action. What's actually happening when you're using it is this seal, it's a rubber seal that's on the end of this rod. As you're pushing it down, it's actually increasing the back pressure here and it's creating a vacuum behind that seal. So you can actually see it giving me some resistance and kind of pushing back as I'm pressing it down. And it's creating this vacuum here, and then right when it reaches this point near the end, it's gonna drop off, and all that vacuum pressure is just gonna cause a sucking motion inside the pen. And when you have this dipped in a bottle of ink, the thing it's going to suck up into the pen is the ink. So that's a basic concept of how it's working. It's super cool, and it's a lot of fun to use. So now I'm just gonna take you step by step and show you what to actually do. So the basics of what you need to get started to fill this pen is you need the pen itself, a bottle of fountain pen ink, and some kind of paper towel, napkin, or something just to wipe off the excess ink after we fill it. First thing you do is you unscrew the cap and kind of set that aside. That way you have the nib exposed like this. Take the cap off your bottle of ink. I'm gonna just turn it around so you can see it a little bit easier. Now the thing is, when you're filling this, it's gonna be a pretty rapid sucking motion, and you need to make sure that the entire nib and feed is completely submerged in the ink. The filler hole for this particular pen, and most fountain pens, is all the way up here at the top of the feed, right near the base of the grip. So you wanna make sure basically that you're dipping it so that ink is kind of getting up to the grip, and you wanna kind of hold it there as you're filling. So we're gonna take this knob on the back, this is our filler knob, and we wanna unscrew it. And when it's unscrewed, it should be able to spin freely, right? So that's kind of unlocking, if you will, the rod. You want to pull it all the way back until it stops. On a demonstrator pen like this, it's pretty easy to tell because you can actually see it in there. But some pens, you can't see it, so you have to kind of just go by feel. Next thing we want to do is we want to take and want to put the whole nib all the way up to the grip down into the ink. And this is the tricky part. It's kind of specific for vacuum filling pens. We're going to have to hold this in a kind of a intentional manner. We don't want to hold it so loosely that when we're pressing it, we might let go of it and kind of slip and hit the nib into the bottom of the bottle. That would be bad. But we also need to hold it down in the ink. We can't be lifting it up, giving some resistance as we're pressing the rod down, because then we're gonna lift up out of the ink and we're not gonna get anything in the pen. So it's kind of a sweet spot that you gotta do. It's a little easier if you have a more full bottle of ink to do this. But I'm gonna demonstrate it here with this Konpeki. So I'm gonna hold it down in there. It doesn't matter how fast I go because it's really about the distance of the travel of this rod here. So you can see it's got some of that back pressure, all that. I'm just gonna press it down in there, and then it's gonna drop off, and then the ink should rush up into there if I've done it right. So I'm gonna press it down, boom. Look at how much ink just filled up in there. Just for good measure, you wanna do this a couple of times, especially if the pen's completely empty and the feed's gotta get saturated and everything. So I'm just gonna hold it down in there. I'm gonna press it down 2 or 3 times, or whatever you feel. There will be like sort of a maximum amount that it's gonna fit in there. Probably about 2/3 to 3/4. So the amount you're seeing here is about as much as it's going to fill in a vacuum filling pen with this method. I wanna pull it out. I've got ink all over the nib and all over the grip. That's what the paper towel's for. So I just kind of wipe off the excess there. Recap my ink and get that out of the way. And then basically the pen is ready to write. You know, the feed's all saturated. I can pretty much touch this to paper. Now before I do, we got to talk about this knob here, because there is something unique about vacuum filling pens. The majority of vacuum filling pens out there, when you screw the knob all the way down, that seal actually locks off the ink in the ink chamber here. And because it's such a high volume of ink, if you're traveling or changing altitudes or even just carrying it around in a bag, you know, it has more of a tendency for the ink to want to leak out of there. So they design it so that it's locked in to help keep that ink from going where it's not supposed to go. But what that does mean is as you're writing with it, you're essentially only writing with the ink that's inside the feed if you're using this vacuum filling thing with the knob screwed all the way down. So every now and then you just want to unscrew that knob. And what that's going to do is it's going to lift the piston seal just up a little bit, allow that ink to flow through. You don't have to do that every time you write, but just every now and then you just loosen that thing up and then tighten it back up when you feel like you don't want it to be loose anymore. And that allows the ink to flow. So that's the one little extra quirk that you have when actually using a vacuum filling pen. So that's basically all the steps that you need to know to fill your vacuum filling pen. I think they're super cool. I'm kind of a techie, hands-on, tactical, nerdy guy. So this is just like, it just rings a lot of bells for me. So I really like it. I think it's pretty cool. If you haven't used a vacuum filling pen before, I don't know, it's pretty neat. I think you should try it. So if you don't have one, of course, I sell them at gouletpens.com, shameless plug. You can go check out pens there, or if you have any troubleshooting questions or anything, you can always reach out to my team at gouletpens.com. Thanks so much for watching, and write on.